Hey guys and girls, on this video I return to Stars Hollow and the wacky world of the Gilmore girls for the first time in quite a while. So this is my review of the 12th episode of the first season, and it is called Double Date. And the episode is written by showrunner Amy Sherman-Palladino, so I think you always know you're on good sort of grounds when she's writing an episode. And this is no exception. I enjoyed this one a lot. I think partly because it's a big Lane episode. It's almost like kind of a Lane centric episode where it explores more to do with her and her interest in dating, but also obviously how strictly kind of conservative Mrs. Kim is, and how Lane has to try and hide that side from her, that sort of life, and juggle the two. And there's a lot of fun with that because Mrs. Kim is a fun character as well. So the double date of the title, in fact there's two double dates, and they both involve like the Gilmore girls. So Rory sort of pressures Dean into asking out Todd for Elaine basically, so they set up a double date where it's Rory and Dean and Elaine and Todd, who's Dean's cousin. And Dean's a little bit skeptical just because he doesn't know what sort of girls Todd likes, so doesn't know if he would like Lane. But Rory obviously wants to do it because Lane appears to really dig Todd, and they've spoken a couple of times, and even Rory's quite cautious. He said, well, you don't really know this guy, you're taking a big chance. But I think what we see in this episode is, again, obviously how Rory and Lorelai really go for bat for their best friends, because the same happens with the other double date. It's basically Lorelai agreeing to go on a double date for the sake of Sookie, who still hasn't gone on the first date with Jackson, even though in the last episode they said let's go out sometime. So I didn't expect there to be much more to that. I sort of thought we might joining them on a date one time, or they might just be together next time we see them, but no, they haven't got around to having the first date yet. So Jackson and Sookie go out on their first date, and it's a double date with Lorelai and Jackson's cousin as well, just to be consistent. It's his cousin, just like it was Dean's cousin Todd with Elaine, or Lane, sorry. And yeah, Jackson's cousin is called something like Rune. It's a weird sort of name. I mean, at first I thought they were saying Rowan, but no, it seems to be something like crazy, like Rune. And I actually recognise the actor, and I'm pretty sure it is him. I think Buffy fans should know him because he's the one who played Whistler at the end of season 2 in Becoming. I think that's the same actor. It looked a lot like him anyway. And so yeah, he plays Jackson's cousin in this episode, and they go on that double date. So again, it really shows you Lorelai and Rory really supporting their best friends on a double date, which they don't particularly want to be involved with. It's obviously more awkward for Lorelai because she's being set up with this guy who she doesn't know, whereas with Rory it's different because Dean's her boyfriend. So yeah, no problem. But it's a cool episode, and I think I've probably said this from the start of these reviews that Lane is one of my favourite characters of the whole show. So getting more of her and her enthusiasm is always great, and we get lots of cool music references because there's a scene with her and Roy where they're going through all these new CDs Lane has brought, so we get references to Grandaddy, Velvet Underground, Nico, all sorts. Because there's a funny little sticking point in the scene where she's brought a Yoko Ono CD, and Rory's like, questions like the purchase. Lane's like, but come on, she's misunderstood. The Beatles would have split up anyway. So that's a really good sort of scene. And another nice little element in the scene is Lorelai and her energy, because she's actually studying for business school, which is a thing in this episode. And the reason for that is because she has ambitions of one day running her own business rather than just being like an employee. And this kind of gets mocked by Michelle at one point in the episode. But it's nice to see Lorelai have that sort of interest, not just do the standard stuff. She's actually interested in studying and looking towards the future. But yeah, she kind of sucks at it because she hasn't done it for years and years. So she keeps like interrupting Rory and Lane's conversation. She keeps like finding excuses to come in. So that's pretty funny. But as I said, we get this stuff where Dean isn't sure if Todd would like Elaine, or Lane, I should stop doing that, Freudian slip, wouldn't like Lane because he doesn't know what sort of girls he likes. And Rory is obviously concerned. Now, they go on a double date to like the local picture house, which is one of the great sort of locations in the show. You have men. I'm not sure if this is the first time it pops up, but you have many an episode where you'll have a double date there or something going on there, because it's one of those great spots in the Gilmore Girls that just shows classic B movies or stuff like that. And I think if I remember right, they're watching Attack of the 50-Foot Woman or something. So that's a great choice. So the pop culture references are on fire in this episode. There's a scene where Rory's reading a Sylvia Plath book as well. So really kind of pumping them out in this episode. But they go to the movie and they're sort of talking separate in the line. And Lane's just so enthusiastic when she's trying to impress Todd. It's really adorable. But she starts telling him about, bands that she likes, and it just all sort of falls flat because he doesn't seem to know many of them or doesn't seem to like them. And then she notices he's got Fugazi on his t-shirt, and they're one of those bands that certainly around this time they're seen as like this really edgy, like alternative indie type band. So a cool band to like, especially for a person of a certain age. And they're actually a band I need to go back and listen to, because I remember a friend lending me a CD of theirs years ago, and for some reason I just couldn't get into it. But I definitely feel I need to go back and listen to Fugazi, because they're always seen as this really edgy sort of uncompromising type band who are really worth your time. But the gag in the scene is that she thinks he likes them because he's got their t-shirt, but it turns out to be his sister's, which is really funny. So she's like, oh, you don't know what's on your t-shirt? He's like, oh, it's my sister's. And then things go south when he says he plans on studying gym or something. And I think the cap off is when they're in the movie theatre itself and they're watching the film, and she's like, oh, you must have a favourite movie. And he says Beethoven. And that's it, really. That's a good sign the relationship isn't to be. Now, nothing against Beethoven. I should say it's an enjoyable movie, but yeah, come on, Todd. It's not a movie you should be putting up there as your favourite movie out of all movies. Come on, man. Yeah, Lane's way too good for this square. And it's that sort of irony where he actually really likes her then, even though they seem to have nothing in common. Dean says later he's really into her, and there's a thing later on where he phones her, but because the date went so bad, Lane doesn't want to talk to him and comes up with an excuse. But yeah, so that's the whole thing. But what ultimately happens is they've lied to Mrs. Kim because obviously she's not into the idea of her daughter dating guys, so they just pretend that like it's Rory and Lane and that they're like renting a video or something or going for a movie. And the ruse is kind of up later when Lorelai's in the coffee shop, Luke's diner, and Mrs. Kim passes and sees her in there and doesn't know where Lane is and comes storming in, and that's when the ruse is up, because not only has Lane lied to her mum, but Rory has lied to Lorelai about what's going on about the whole double date. So Lorelai has to give her a bit of a talking to as well. And I'll get to the other double date in a minute, but there's still like this pep talk from Lorelai, obviously, and then at the end or near the end, she goes into the antique store and kind of gives Mrs. Kim a bit of advice, which I think Mrs. Kim begrudgingly sort of listens to, even though she's playing like the stern sort of mother who has grounded Lane. And I just loved this conversation because at one point, like Lorelai says, it's not really gonna do to you can't just ground her and throw away the key, and Mrs. Kim like, well, I didn't throw away the key, it's in the kitchen cupboard or something, and Lorelai's like, oh, okay, well, I was speaking metaphorically, and it's pretty great, but. Ultimately, yeah, I think Mrs. Kim is taking on board what Lorelai is saying, even if she's like maybe putting up this stern front, as I said. And progress is made by the end of the episode because Lane has been granted being allowed to go on the front porch, so she rings Rory all excited, which is, yeah, really sweet. So the other double date, as I said, it's Jacksonucky, Lorelai, and what did I say, Room, the Whistler guy out of Buffy, yeah. And there's obviously, again, they're playing with irony in this episode because Room is, I'm going to say Room just for the fun of it, but he's a total jerk because he basically like objects to Lorelai, says, man, she's too tall. It's like starts talking like she's some sort of an athlete, and Lorelai and Sookie can overhear this as he's like getting upset to Jackson outside, and it's just being really jerk. And it's like later on, like Luke reinforces, hey, no, that's actually a good thing, surely. And so the date obviously goes really awkwardly. They go to this restaurant, and part of the joke is that Jackson and Sookie are just obsessed with the food. Like Sookie's going on about the mussels and like have they been drained properly or something, and Jackson's like asking about the carrots. But despite that, they're not really talking to each other, and the date isn't going too well. But things take a turn when they go to Luke's, where they switch the location. And this I really love because it's like on Lorelai's home turf, and she gets to hang out and talk to Luke. And again, we see their chemistry like developing, and they play cards, and he obviously makes her like a burger or something. And it's just obviously really nice and supportive. And Mrs. Kim's timing is really bad, like the scene where she storms in, because it's when Luke is basically about to ask Lorelai out for the first time, and Mrs. Kim storms in. And they come back to it later, and you think, Luke, come on, you can do it. But he doesn't the second. It's like the next day when Rory and Lorelai have come into the cafe. But no, he kind of chickens out, which is a shame. But it's a sweet scene as well, because Lorelai kind of smiles, because I think she maybe senses he was going to ask her out. So that's the whole thing. But the calf scenes are really well done. We see again what a great guy Luke is, what a genuine guy he sort of is, and what happens ultimately, which I think you know is going to happen, is that eventually Jackson and Sookie are going to like get together and things are going to click. And it happens when, again, Room/Riddler is just being a complete a-hole, and he says to Jackson, well, come on, let's go bowling. And Jackson almost does it, but then Sookie speaks up and is like, no, stay here with me, we haven't really started our date yet. And that's when Jackson turns and it's like, no, Si, I'm going to stay here with Sookie. And that's when they actually hit it off, and we see Lorelai and Luke watching from the counter. So it's really good stuff. And actually, the gag of the episode is that as Room storms out, Lorelai's like, bye, Loon, which is great. So yeah, that's the episode. So pretty good stuff again, pretty solid, very enjoyable. I love the stuff with Lane. There was some good stuff on the double date. So that's it, Gilmore Girls episode 12 of the first season. Let me know what you think of it in the comments below, if you've seen it, if you're a Gilmore Girls fan, sorry. And I've seen that the next episode that I have to watch, episode 13, is the one where Rory goes to a Bangles concert in the city with a bunch of her sort of classmates from Chiltern. And I remember that being one of the best episodes, actually, of the first season at least. Might be one of the best episodes overall, but certainly of the first season. It's one that, when I was watching it first time around, really stood out. So I'm looking forward to rewatching that. So it's called something like Concert Interrupted or something like that. So you have that to look forward to next time if you guys want to watch that before I review it. I might try and do it again this week to keep things going. But yeah, keep watching Gilmore Girls, guys, because it's great, and I'll see you next time.